The dinner was awesome. We went to Al Diriyah, which is the old fort part of Riyadh. It actually wasn't a part of Riyadh. Now it's a part of Riyadh, but it was very historic. We kind of got immersed in Saudi culture, enjoyed some really good food. Actually had 2 good nights of sleep, which has been great. So I think we're feeling good right now as we are about to head back.
Yeah, good night's sleep last night. I have to say a big thanks to Mr. Chris Clawson for assisting the sleep. He's got a side business as well as EGYM now, hasn't he?
He does. He's become the sleep pill distributor. So I didn't know he's getting into the distribution business, but that's been incredibly helpful.
But also, I think on some respect, a bit like what Chris Clawson said, you got to be careful not to sit back on your laurels and think you know everything when really you know nothing.
No, that's true. And I think I'm actually going back after these 2.5 days, honestly, chock full of information. I have to unpack it, digest it, but I think it's going to be really helpful and probably change some of the things I'm thinking about business in the region and also out of the region as well.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of L.I.F.T.S. And if you do, then please share it with as many people as you can, because the more people that get to listen to this, the more that we're going to be able to continue to share this great content. Thanks for listening.
We have Chris Clawson, Chief Commercial Officer of EGYM. And Chris, when I first met you, you were at L.I.F.T.S in your second go around at L.I.F.T.S. I'm obviously relatively new to the industry. I've been in the industry for about 12 years, which seems like a long time, but compared to Matthew and you, that's nothing. And I've known of you, obviously heard of you, all the things that you've done. And now you're at EGYM and you're joining us here on L.I.F.T.S at Beyond Activ in Riyadh. So thank you for coming on.
It's great to be here. You and I had breakfast together in San Francisco.
That's right.
Remember it well. And we talked about where the industry was headed.
Yeah.
And you were obviously thinking the business from what I'll call it an outsider's perspective, which is probably the healthiest perspective, because there's the challenge this industry has historically, there's a lot of inbreeding, is that people just keep hiring the same people and they keep going to new places, doing the same things that they used to do and calling it new. And when people come from outside the industry and they have all the learnings that they've had from their past life, both professionally and as an individual, they are challenged. Mm-hmm. They're challenged by the status quo. And the easiest way to make people who have new ideas go away is to discourage them or to disparage them. And maybe it's a little of both. And in my personal view of the industry, and I've been in the industry for 40 years, in August it'll be 40 years, is that I embrace all ideas. Now I don't react the same to all ideas, but I embrace all ideas. Right. And if I have what I'll call a personality in the industry, is that my personality, and I think my history in the industry would say this, is that I treat everyone from the inventor who has a concept to the largest health club chain in the world exactly the same way. I'm kind, I'm considerate, and I give them my time, which is the best thing that I can do. And I can't tell you how many times people have said to me, wow, I can't believe you did that. I can't believe you took that much time with me. People coming up to me, I don't know if you remember, this is here at the show, I don't know if you remember me, but I met you in Chicago at a large group outing. And I said, I remember your face, but I don't remember, tell me again what you do. He said, you were so nice to me and spent so much time with me. He goes, I was having problems with my son in sports. He said, and I understood that you were a professional athlete, and we talked about that. He says, I'll never forget that. So when you look at people coming in from outside the industry, it makes people uncomfortable. And when I came back to L.I.F.T.S, you mentioned this, I was there 3 times, right? Twice as CEO. When I came back in 2010, I had been gone for 6.5 years. I joined the company in 1994. We were $180 million.
Wow.
Okay. We were privately held by a private equity group out of New York called Mancuso. Then we were sold to Brunswick in 1997. And we added Hammer Strength and a company called High Tech, which became Life Fitness Strength. And by 2004, when I left, almost 2005, we were $500 million. So we'd gone from 180 to $500 million, and let's call it 10 years, in a decade. When I came back 6.5 years later, we were $500 million. We were $500 million. 6.5 years later. And we had a group of people who were oftentimes relegated to doing what I call minions work, as opposed to people who are inspired and allowed to do what they're capable of. And I think the most amazing thing, I came back and I had an executive team that was comprised of basically 3 different people. people that I knew well, people that I knew a little bit, and people that I didn't know at all. In short order, the two most talented people I had on my team were hired by my predecessor and his predecessor. One from Baxter Medical, the other from Abbott. Spectacular. And I told him that after I got in. I said, listen, we were doing succession planning, and you're in my succession plan. You two are my successors. If I, as Frank Vondervan from L.I.F.T.S would say, if I hit the bus tomorrow, instead of the bus hitting me, if I hit the bus tomorrow, you would be my successors. And so I look at this conversation around the industry, and I look at where I was at, because before I came back to L.I.F.T.S, I was at Matrix, competing with L.I.F.T S. So I have this executive team in front of me, again, which I mentioned, 3 different types of people. And I said, when I talk about this from a sales perspective, so I'm talking to the VP of sales, I said, there is a fine line between being supremely confident and being cocky, being maybe obnoxious. I think the words I used was overconfident. I said, you guys are crossing that line too often and you don't know it. I said, so I would much rather have somebody who is over the line confident than somebody who is demoralized and has no idea of what success feels like, because we can temper that, right? It's hard to elevate somebody to be a sprinter if they're a jogger. So we'll work on that. I said, but here's the thing that's most important, and this is what I'm going to tell you. And then when we have these meetings with the rest of the company, some live and some virtually, I said, you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, or you've got to be comfortable losing. Right. And I don't like losing, so we're going to have to start getting uncomfortable so that we can win again. And so when we talk about, when you and I met, Muhammad, and we talked about what you were talking about is uncomfortable for a traditional manufacturer, right? It's uncomfortable.
Yes.
And yet, if you don't embrace that discomfort, if you don't imagine that there's way more than just making cardio and strength equipment, you're going to fail. Long term, you're going to fail.
You've addressed this a little bit in what you've just said, and I was thinking about a question as you was talking, but also I'll be interested in your perspective, because you've been with a number of different companies, and my guess is it's fairly tempting to play the playbook. Being through similar situations in terms of product and expansion of markets and people, and you gave the reference to Mo coming outside of the industry. So how are you in your new role, almost having that perspective of someone that's looking at this with a totally fresh set of eyes, without necessarily, using some of the stuff that you've known and learned and been successful, but also not getting overly caught up in some of the things that you may make sense to forget about?
I think it's natural as animals. There's 2 things. You fall back to your nature, or you fall back to your nurture. And I think it's very common for people to look for comfort and for consistency. And I'll tell you, one of the challenges that people that have come in to lead companies from outside the industry, when I say outside the industry, I don't mean outside fitness, but I'll call it durables, computer controlled durables, is that they have no concept of the complexity of the business. So therefore, they try to do is try to take the things that they've learned in consumer packaged goods and make durables fit. They try to take what they've learned from soft lines, clothing and fashion, and make what they're trying to achieve in this computer-controlled, complex environment somehow work.
Right.
And they almost always, to a person across companies, they just fail. And not just in the fitness industry, because they don't understand how complex product development is. They don't understand that it's about a person. So a pair of pants, they either fit well or they don't, okay? And you might buy your clothing based on fit or performance or both. But it's a lot easier to look at an anthropomorphic model and make clothes fit for whatever you're trying to target than it is to have an elliptical feel really good. Right. So you have to imagine that what you've learned, if it's applicable in an industry that you've been in for 40 years, there's something there. And sometimes it's not what you should do. Sometimes it's what you shouldn't do. Sometimes it's not figuring out how to get over the mountain. It's how to avoid the pitfall that's right in front of you where you're going to trip and hurt yourself. But the conversation is really different if you pay attention to the customer. And this is what I always tell people is if you're inwardly focused and you're focused on product development, features, and subsequent benefits, you're not going to see the opportunity. Mm-hmm. You're just going to keep doing what you did before, and you're going to do it a little bit better. And it might maybe do it a lot better. And you can find success, right? You can make the better widget, but if you don't pay attention to where the industry, one, is headed, and if you're a market leader where the market should go, then you're going to stay either where you are or you're going to trip. And I like to do this with a visualization. I talk about the different phases of being in the market. So there are people that are in the market that are laggards. They don't even float along at the pace of the stream. They're just sort of there. They don't do anything different. And you can be really successful. And I'm going to say this, and someone's going to get really mad at me because I'm going to call it out. There are categories of business where there's been no innovation. But because of where the industry has headed, they become crazy successful with this very basic analog product. And you go, oh my God, they've been around for 30 years and now they're just tearing it up, right? Well, it's because the market moved there and they're just super successful because of it. They were in the right place at the right time. Not because they were innovative, just the right place at the right time. And those people in the realm of the history of the industry are laggards. Mm-hmm. Then you have people who I call them, they're in the market. They're moving at the speed of the stream. No faster, no slower. Sometimes they go into the tidal pool. Sometimes they go into sort of a slowdown. They get caught up on a log, but they're mostly in the stream, moving at the speed of the market. Then you have people who are, I'll call them market leaders. They're out in front. They're paddling. And then you have people who are market drivers. And market drivers, they have a motorboat, and they're actually going at the speed of the motor. That's challenging because that's when you can figure out, oh no, there's actually a waterfall ahead, or rapids at the least, and I might wreck my boat because I'm out further than everybody else is. And there are people who have been very successful doing that. I think Peloton did that with their content. I think they were market drivers. They got out in front of, with an analog product, right? It's just a bike. Technology is the enabler here, but what it was is the ability to create content and deliver it effectively, and then all the leaderboard and all that. So that's an example of somebody who's a market driver. If you look at the industry right now, most everybody that's in this industry wants to either be a laggard or they want to just float in the market. That's where they want to be. They really do. Yeah. Club operators want to do what they used to do just have lots of members come. They're okay with the attrition. They're okay with the fact that they've got to constantly re-engage with and sell to somebody else. They think that's the way it is. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you have people that say, man, if I keep doing what I've been doing before, I'll have either maybe same success, but I might go out of business. Mm-hmm. And so if you look at your business, Matthew. You had a business that was invigorated by opportunity with the marketplace as it moved to more and more different than from traditional. Then you looked at it and said, there's more to that than just barbells and dumbbells and accessories. There's this thing called functional training. Yeah. And you're in, again, right place, right product, right time. But you said, I think this is not going to be a fad. This is going to be a trend. And you took that and you said, I'm going to change the dynamic of my business to go from being a supplier of these things that I've been successful with to being an innovator around something that I think is going to become a trend, which is functional training. And you change the dynamic within your company. There are lots of people that don't pay attention, and to their own peril. But if they do pay attention, the bigger challenge is to not chase after fads, and to recognize if there's this trend there and it's going to be successful, do I really think I can play there? Because I think and this goes back to what you said about bringing what you've learned before, those who chased after the most targets actually end up with the least. Mm-hmm. Those that know who they are and stay true to who they are and where they're headed tend to be more successful. And I think that's where the companies that I've been part of, what I've tried to instill in everyone is, let's be uncomfortable. 1, 2 is, let's be uncomfortable doing something that we think we all should be doing. So let's have consensus. And 3 is, when we fail catastrophically, we all said that's the play we're going to run. And when we fail, we all fail together. So no one's to blame. So nobody feels like they're strung out because they were pushing for something that made us uncomfortable and then it failed. And we all go, see, I told you. Right. And then everyone says, man, I'm never sticking my head out because I don't want to get chopped off.
Well, look, there's so much to unpack there, right? I mean, I don't even know where to start, but a couple things that came to mind when you talked about companies that are good at one thing think that the same strategy could apply to something else. Two examples from our industry: Lululemon acquiring Mirror, try to apply the same strategy, and then even Peloton trying to go commercial, and that failed. Like, what worked in one does not mean it's going to work in the other. But look, we're here in Riyadh, and I don't know if this is your first time in the region or if you've been here before.
Many times. In fact, I used to be on the board of Lead Jam. So
I did not know that.
I was on the board of Lead Jam pre-IPO, during the IPO, and post-IPO.
Okay, there we go. I did not know that.
Yeah.
So one question for you. You also talked a lot about the importance of being in that leadership position, but from a product perspective, that's a very relative term, and I've learned that in technology, right? So what it means to introduce a new product on the leadership side, being at the cutting edge in the United States, is very different than what it means to do that in the UK, Germany, and now in the Middle East. Because what we're doing and what might work for an Equinox or a Lifetime is not going to work for a Lead Jam right here at this time.
At this time, yeah. So, yeah, there's a couple things there that I want to maybe address. And I'm not going to turn this into a pitch for EGYM or anybody else. I'll describe the market as I see it. You're right. I would tell you that generally speaking, health clubs are mostly the same globally. They're mostly the same. In fact, when we talk about derivation, they're so close to being the same at the price point. So if you're a premium facility and you're premium in Riyadh, you may have more amenities just because you have an audience that's willing to pay for amenities like Turkish baths and billiard tables and all the things that they may have that a club in, say, Europe, Western Europe, Asia, or the United States wouldn't have. But for the most part, they're kind of the same. That's a trap. Because if you think that they're mostly the same and that you can be really successful and have breakout success by doing mostly the same, you're going to struggle. Unless you have a brand, like Hammer Strength, you have a brand, and when somebody says, if you could have any plate-loaded equipment, what would you want? You say, well, I want Hammer Strength, right? If you could have any elliptical, what would you want? Oh, I want the Precor EFX. I mean, you can have breakout products in a category and be really successful there. But if you said, I want to compete, I'm Lululemon. Remember what I said earlier. What are they experts at?
Clothing.
Not just clothing.
Athleisure.
Women's clothing, and then later men's clothing. And they created a category, right? So, Chuck Runyon, I love when he says this. He goes, thank God for yoga pants. It's like, because two things. One is, if you're Anytime Fitness, everybody wants to look good in yoga pants, right? So everybody says, I got to work out so I can look good in my yoga pants. But they captivated the market with this. It wasn't innovative, right? I mean, yoga pants have been around for people who did yoga forever, but they made them fashionable. People wear them, like you go to a formal and somebody's like, she's wearing a Lululemon. Okay, this is supposed to be a gown and black tie affair, and they're wearing Lululemon. Total credit. I don't have a clue. About what they're doing with durables. And there was this belief, and this is one of what I call the flawed beliefs, that if something is true in one sense, that's true everywhere. Going back to what you just said, Mohammed. The reason why Peloton was successful is that there was a group of elite exercisers. 1, 2, there was a group of elite exercisers that loved group cycling. 3, there was a group of them that really liked the ability to do it in their home or in their apartment and the convenience of it all. And they loved the fact that it was competitive and it was exciting and it was different, okay? But that's cream. That's almost cream on cream. If you look at Tonal or Mirror or Hydro or iFit, there's a group of people that totally appreciate that content on demand. But the cost to create the content, to maintain the content, to capture the customer, to captivate the customer and have them continue to
keep the customer
is extraordinary. And so what you've seen, and again, I think I'm fairly knowledgeable here, is that 100% of those people are grossly unprofitable to the point of almost being comical, right? When you lose $1.5 billion, I've said this before, and I'm not taking it away because I give them all the credit for what they were good at. There was a point in time this is not when Peloton stock was at $160 a share. This is way before they were even publicly traded. And they were valued at $7.9 billion. I remember it perfectly. And I'm there with a Brunswick board member, and we're looking out and we're talking about their valuation. I said, just recognize that their valuation that they've just been given on this grossly unprofitable business, which again, I don't see the specter of this thing turning profitable, is more than everybody in this hall combined. So if you took Techno Gym, Life Fitness, Precor, I don't care, Zumba, take them all, throw them together, and they're less value. You can own this entire floor for less money. And by the way, almost everybody that's out here is profitable. Why would you invest in something so grossly unprofitable? Why? Because first mover. Because they saw this as a tech play, not fitness.
And they were valued as a tech play.
As a tech play. And I can tell you in my own personal life, part of the reason why I separated from Life Fitness in 2017 is because there was this belief that carried on with my successor that we should be a tech company and we should compete that way. And I said, as part of this conversation, which was not a short conversation, it happened over years of constant pushing, prodding. And my boss at Brunswick, Dusty McCoy, fought with me, said, how in the world could I, as a company who's, by the way, exceptionally profitable, more profitable than our top 2 competitors combined, because of the fact—
Even today?
No, this is what
Okay.
having this conversation. I don't know where they are today. But at that time, we were more profitable than our top 2 competitors combined. How could I possibly lose 3 times more than I make? How would I invest in my business? How would I innovate? How would I pay my bills? Because Brunswick was the oldest continuously traded stock on the New York Stock Exchange, okay? 1912. If we are not a brick and mortar traditional company that makes inboard, outboard, stern drive, bowling, billiards, boats, fitness equipment, we are not a tech play. Now there's tech involved clearly, but we're not a tech play and we're not going to be valued that way. And I kept saying to this particular person who was one of the ones that helped me go away, I said, I want you to look at the industry right now and I want you to I'm going to tell you how I see Peloton. Peloton is Tesla and I am Daimler-Benz. Is Daimler-Benz dropping everything that they're doing to go after them? No. Is Toyota Group? Is Volkswagen Group? No, is Ford, General Motors? I can go on and on. No, because there'll come a point in time where they'll decide where they want to play and how they want to play in electric cars, but they have stakeholders and stockholders that they're beholden to. We're publicly traded. We have stakeholders and stockholders. I can't lose more than I make. I can't do it. But you kept seeing these stories about the valuations of all these companies, and everybody kept saying, oh my God, imagine if Life Fitness were valued at $162 a share. At that time, Brunswick stock was at, call it $90 a share. Imagine if our stock were to double. But it wouldn't, because if we introduced 400, 800, $1 million, $1 billion, $1.5 billion of losses, the stock would plummet.
That's right. Yeah.
So I hope I answered that question long-winded wise.
Yeah, no, and I mean, as it kind of, just to bring it back to the region here, so you think that the gyms are essentially the same all over the world and that they're priced relatively the same. But when you're thinking about how you work with them, and I did not know that you were on the board of Legion, which is fantastic, but what differences have you seen? Or maybe we're seeing differences, but you're really seeing it.
No, I'm saying when I say that gyms are mostly the same, so when you think about what mostly means exactly that. If I were to compare one to the other, do they have a front desk management system? Do they operate within a MMS?
Right.
Yes. Is it low touch environment where they sell memberships on a kiosk or on the internet and they have no staff? There's a whole group of clubs that are like that. There are groups of clubs that are high touch, personal training. They have all the amenities. They have spas. They have, hairdressing salons. But what they share mostly in common is if they didn't have fitness equipment in their clubs, nobody would be a member. Nobody would be a member at Lifetime Fitness or Equinox if they had no fitness equipment. Mm-hmm. Now they might join something else, another permutation. It might be called Equinox Lifestyle, and Equinox Lifestyle is spas and it's hot and cold plunge baths and it's flexibility and it's all you could have. But when you say what are they mostly sharing in common, they have strength equipment, cardio equipment, personal training, functional training. That's where they're mostly the same. They differentiate themselves with levels of service and the amenities that they provide as part of that. That's why the price points are different. And then you have boutiques, and you have studios, and then you have studios within clubs, boutiques within clubs like Pilates or yoga or hot yoga. But when I say they're mostly the same, that's what I'm talking about. Okay. What I know to be different about this market is this market is in hyper growth mode, almost more than any market in my career. So, I was there when England went crazy. I was there when Fitness First was going so big in England, they had to go to Europe. They were going so good in Europe, they had to go to the Middle East. They were doing so well in the Middle East. We got to go to Asia, right? and Virgin, let's go everywhere. We'll go to the US, we'll go to Africa, we'll go everywhere. Because there's all this fallow ground for us to harvest. And Family Fitness moved from California to Hong Kong and then later mainland China. Everybody saw the opportunity. But in a lot of cases that got wound back in or it got splintered. If you look at Saudi Arabia, if you look at UAE in particular, those two countries in the Middle East, and probably Israel too, is you have a whole group of people that are recognizing it's really, really hot here and I'm stuck inside. And if I said to you, and you know this, Mohammed, where do people go when it's really hot here? There's two places. They go to the mall or they stay home.
Yeah.
Mall or stay home. And the mall is not only to shop, just to get out and walk around and be seen by people and like we're alive. But the health club is now a counter-seasonal solution. They have a tremendous problem with potentially type 2 diabetes and obesity here because of what's been introduced into the market relative to nutrition and the fact that they can be forced to be inactive for long periods of time because of the weather here. But most importantly, the biggest difference in Saudi is the royal family has said there's a plan called 2030. And guess what? There's only two things that keep people from doing whatever they want to do: creativity and money. They have the creativity and they have the money and they have the reasons behind it. So they're not going to get a lot of fight from people to say, hey, we're doing this because it's going to benefit our country. So everyone's going to look at it and go, yeah, and this is about me. It's not about the royal family. This is about me, the citizen here. Women can drive and women can go to health clubs. Changes everything. So I was here before. Most of the exercise that women did was in the home. And they might have a personal trainer that came into the home, that's supervised by the family, but it was clearly they were segregated. They totally love it. They love it, just like women love fitness everywhere, and for completely different reasons, right? Part of the reason why women like to work out is just to be with other women. Yeah, just to be. I'm side to side with another woman here, and we're working out. We have a common belief here in the benefit of exercise. It's also just to get away from the house, right? Just get away from your house. Get away from your kids for a little bit, get away from your husband, get away from your family. It's me time. And so when you're exercising, whether you're in a club on a treadmill or a piece of strength equipment, it's me time. It's about me. And so if you look at the combination of the 2030 plan, the influence of the royal family, the access to the funds, the prescription that's almost a mandate to be more physically active and more successful with exercise, and then all the money that's in this country to make that happen, there's no place like it. I mean, honestly, Matthew, you travel the world. Am I right or am I wrong?
It's the first time I've been here, but yeah, it's been part of the conversation. It's a very unique situation here, and one that we've got a board meeting next week, and it's certainly going to be high up on the agenda to figure out exactly what to do. And it kind of leads me on to a fitness industry question, which you've obviously got probably more experience than many of. You've seen the growth from a number of times at L.I.F.T.S, Matrix. You've now moved over to EGYM, which is from what I understand, a new category really, at a time where many of the equipment brands are kind of reaching a bit of a plateau really, because I've known L.I.F.T.S for a long time before they had the strength, and then they got into the hammer strength and a number of other evolutions. But it kind of seems as though, well, what's next? Where are you going to get your growth? And interesting to be sitting at the top of a company like a L.I.F.T.S or a Precor or a Matrix at the moment, and try to see what they're thinking, particularly in relation to your fish swimming example, and the fact that you think many people are just sort of staying in the stream. So what do you think is next? And I'm not just talking about EGYM, but what do you think needs to happen to spur that side of the business to grow?
Well, I'm gonna actually do my EGYM pitch here, because I think that is the future. It really and I'll tell a brief story here. So the chairman of EGYM is George Buckley. George Buckley is the retired CEO of 3M. Before he was a CEO of 3M, he was a CEO of Brunswick Corporation. Right. So George was, in 1997 when they bought us, he was the president of Mercury Marine. And then soon thereafter, he became CEO of Brunswick. So my boss reported into George Buckley. I've known George Buckley for 27 years. When George Buckley joined 3M from Brunswick, he went from a $7 billion company to a $30 billion company. Huge stretch. A lot of board members said, this is insane, this is too much. When he was forced to retire at 65 because they had mandatory retirement, they were 150 billion.
Wow.
150. This is a very old, very much stodgy thought process, potentially. I don't want to necessarily paint them with that brush, but
Yeah.
he took what was old and made it new. So when Philip said to the board last year in the fourth quarter, I really would like to get somebody who can help us to see the future and have it resonate with the customers, that's what I'm looking for. And the board said, if you could have anybody, who would you want? He said, well, Chris Clawson, but he's not going to come to EGYM. And George Buckley said, so Clawson won't come to EGYM, but George Buckley will. And George Buckley was on the board of PepsiCo and Hitachi, but he did. He came over because Philip had read a story he told about how much he enjoys invigorating and companies and growing companies, even in situations where the view isn't already there. But the view's already there with EGYM. Philip is brilliant. I mean, I'm just going to say that right now. Mm-hmm. What makes EGYM, in my past experience, so unique is that their executive team has no agenda. And I can honestly, that one person has an agenda. They are literally in lockstep. They're nice people. They walk the halls and they interact with people. You go into the cafeteria and everyone's full of joy. 400 employees in Germany. They're so excited about the future. So 1, 2, you asked about where the future's headed. And this is my analogy. If you had iTunes and all they offered was rock and roll, if you're a rock and roll devotee and they have the deepest library, you're going to go, iTunes is awesome. I mean, anything I want, going back to the very beginning, to the early 1950s to present day, anything from acid rock to, pure rock and roll, they've got it. You can have some great success, but that's not what iTunes is. I see EGYM as being iTunes. EGYM has smart strength equipment, which is where it started. It's called Gym Tech. 19 pieces, soon to be 19. We're introducing a hip thrust product at FIBO and URSA. 19 pieces of smart strength. Amazing product. It started as being a really nice product as a circuit piece for beginners through intermediate. Mm-hmm. Guided you. Everything was biometrically set up for you. You have a biometric screening through the Fitness Hub, which is another element I'll talk about very briefly. But your seat adjustments were automatic. Your resistance was automatic. It captured that, and as you progress, it automatically changed your resistance profile. So let's just call that EGYM. Where their iTunes is they integrate right now, fully integrate with L.I.F.T.S, with Precor, with Matrix, with Core, with True, and 196 others, including Garmin and Strava and others. So what they're doing is saying, and I can tell you this and look you in the eye and say, we don't want to be in a cardio business. Mm-hmm. We don't want to make free weights. We don't make benches and racks. We don't do selectorized. We're not going to do functional training. What we're going to do is we're going to be iTunes. And so what we're introducing, hot off the presses here, what we're introducing at URSA and FIBO is what we call Genius. Today, right now, in our portfolio of exercises, we have 7 billion exercises. 7 billion in our AI. 7 billion with the B. Yeah. We have 340 million onboarding encounters. So today when you walk, if you go down to the trade show and you walk into the Matrix booth and you swipe, today it's a band, tomorrow it'll be RFID, it comes up on our console. And all that progression that would come as part of cardio is in their console. When we do our VO2 max testing as part of our onboarding, so the onboarding is flexibility. There's a flexibility test. There's a metabolic test. So we partner with Tanita and Sika and with InBody. So we do body mass index and weight. And then we have the photography capabilities, the scanning capabilities within our hub to know your height. So we know your height, your weight, and your metabolism. When I say metabolism, everything. Not only BMI, but everything about your body. The hydration levels. Then we do flexibility, which is head and neck, shoulders and core, fore and aft, side to side, lower body. I put you on a strength test. I do 3 reps to max on 4 pieces of equipment and automatically set up your strength profile. But with Genius, now I can not only do all the things I just said, I can prescribe to you L.I.F.T.S selectorized, hammer strength, free weights, dumbbells, functional training, small group exercise, recovery, and all that's done through AI. So that 7 billion will become 14 billion in a blink of an eye. And it's not exercise for the sake of exercise. It's Mohammed, who's in excellent condition. His goal is cardiovascular capacity and he wants to become stronger. And you're the opposite direction. You're pure performance. All you want to do is get stronger faster. You want to just be the best you can be. The progression that's being created from the training app, the trainer has that. They can onboard you, or it can be self-service. But I'm now taking you through this and I know all about you, what your goals are. And I can suggest training and adjust training for you, or I can let the AI do the training for you based on what's in the facility. So the facility only shows what they have available. It's not prescribing things they don't have.
Oh, that's great.
So if they don't have a rower, it's not going to tell you to go use a rower. But if they have a rower, it's going to tell you, it's going to show you a picture of the concept too, and it's going to tell you what resistance level you should be set at. It's going to tell you the seat setting for the L.I.F.T.S piece, or the hammer piece, or the pre-core piece, the bike, so that when you walk over and all you have to do on the cardio is exercise, and it's going to set up the program for you. And on the strength equipment, you have to basically agree. I did what it says to do. It says to do 20 pounds on an incline press with dumbbells. And it says to do 10 reps and you did it. It's done.
That's incredible. Yeah. Can't wait to see it.
That's what I call the iTunes.
Final question then, Chris, because I think it's going to be an episode on its own, actually. A lot of value here. But final question. We're in this new role, brand new company. Many people have still not really heard of them. Even myself, I've heard of them, but not really known what they do until now. What are going to be, what is one of the biggest challenges you can see in your position of realizing that vision?
Yeah, you actually brought this back full circle. So we talked about how people are very content with being laggards and staying in what's called just not even the flow. Making people uncomfortable and doing things they're not used to doing is challenging. So if you look at EGYM's historic history for 12 years, it's taking this smart strength and mainstreaming it with people who are saying, I don't need to make change because what I have right now works just fine. I have free weights, I have selectorized equipment, I have some functional training. I don't need anything else. But where we've seen the success is when we install this into facilities and people are part of the program, it's telling them their bio age, right? How old am I? How old am I doing strength? What's my bio age for strength? What's my bio age for metabolism? What's my bio age for flexibility? What's my bio age for cardiovascular capacity? I have a number now. I know where I'm at. Their attrition rate is less than half of what it is for the members that aren't integrated. Right. And that is very telling. And not only is it telling, but in some cases where memberships are striated, when people experience this and know that it's the next level membership up, the conversion rate can be north of 60%, where they move up just because of EGYM, just because of Fitness Hub, and just because of the branded member app. It's pretty powerful.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for being on, and I appreciate you having that breakfast with me. And like I said, I've known of you for a long time, so I had the same reaction. Wow, he's going to sit down with me and listen to me and pay attention to me and really kind of, and we've kind of chatted quite a few times in the sense that I appreciate it. And also what you just talked about, I think it adds accountability, right? So you think about the different levers that a gym could use, personal training, adding to the calendar, but this, what you're talking about with Genius and looking at your bio age, all of those touch points adds accountability, and accountability adds to retention. So again, it's really going to help save the member. So thank you so much for being on, and this has been great.
No, I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Matt.